This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Algeria recalls ambassador from France in protest of alleged interference in its internal affairs. Former Tigray government official in court as tensions deepened between the United Nations and Ethiopia over staff expulsions. And hundreds of protests in the United States over restrictions on abortion imposed by state governments. This is Africa Live. Hello and welcome to the show. I am Peninah Karibe. Let's have a look at the stories coming up this hour. A direct flight from Libyan capital Tripoli has touched down in Cairo for the first time since 2014 as connection resumes. And in sports, South Africa eyes hosting rights for the 2021 FIFA Club World Cup. Algeria has recalled its ambassador from Paris for consultations over comments by French President Emmanuel Macron, as he is reported saying Algeria is ruled by a political military system. The Algerian presidency has released a statement calling it an inadmissible interference in its internal affairs. Macron was also reported describing the former French colony as having an official history which has been totally rewritten. Those remarks have been denied by Macron himself. The two countries' relations are tense following France's decision to cut the number of visas it issues to Algeria. A former senior official in an interim government for Ethiopia's Tigray region has appeared in court over allegations of inciting conflict between the Tigrayan people and the central government, according to his lawyer. Soon after war broke out in November 2020, the federal government seized the Tigray capital and appointed an interim administration. Abraha Desta's court appearance comes a day after the UN Security Council held a closed-door meeting to discuss the expulsion of 7 UN officials by the Ethiopian government. Let's get more now from CGTN's Girum Chala. He's live for us from Addis Ababa. Girum, what more can you tell us about this former official accused of fueling the conflict between the government and the Tigrayan people?
Peninah, arrested on Thursday night, Abraha Desta was accused of inciting conflict between the federal government and the Tigray regional state, as you've said, after he wrote an open letter for the mayor of Addis Ababa city, Peninah Karibe, calling for an alleged arrest of Tigrayans to be stopped. On the other hand, the police is also accusing him of holding illegal firearm in his possession. So he has appeared in court on Saturday and expecting another appointment in that court. A few background. Abraha Desta is a former leader of a Tigray opposition party named Arena. He was once or twice also was arrested by the TPLF before. And after the Ethiopian Federal Force took over Mekelle City, he was assigned as a social affairs bureau head for the provisional administration by the federal government. Now he is detained and is waiting for his trial. The government is saying that everything is going to be handled according to the rule and the law of the land, and we should expect to see results in the next few days.
All right, let's talk about the 7 UN staff that were expelled by Ethiopia. The world is also awaiting the country's response to the pressure to let them, the UN staff, resume duties in the country. What's the latest on this?
So the international pressure is continuing, Peninah, as you might expect, as the UN is firm standing, calling on the Ethiopian government to reverse its decision of expelling those 7 UN aid workers, most of them from the UN OCHA. The Ethiopian government also is remaining firm. It says that it has a right to expel people, especially those representing the United Nations, if and when they are found meddling in the internal affairs of the country, walking away from their official mandate of serving the people who are in need in the northern part of the country at the moment, or people across the country needing for humanitarian aid. Tomorrow, by the way, Peninah, the Ethiopian government is going to be formed, the new one, under Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's Prosperity Party. We're expecting a few more developments in his speech when he's perhaps going to take office after the parliament decides to do so. So we have to wait as well tomorrow to hear the latest. But so far, what we know is the foreign ministry is firm standing that it is demanding the replacement of these 7 people without any apologies from any party. And then they are also waiting for the UN to put some kind of explanation as to why these people have taken measures of meddling in the security and internal affairs of the nation, Peninah.
All right, Gurum, we appreciate that update. Thank you very much for joining us, Gurum Chala, live in Addis Ababa. Now, management at Angola's largest open-pit diamond mine, Katoka, says an overflow pipeline that ruptured near a tailings dam has now been repaired and the spill contained with minimal environmental damage. The rupture in July caused mining waste known as tailings to leak into the Lova River, a tributary of the Chikapa River in the neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo. Angela Kupla spoke to the mine management.
Management confirmed that following the July 27th rupture, inspection teams identified the rupture point and also surveyed and scanned the dam structure and pipes to check for any more cracks using drones and geophysical radar. The red-coloured mining waste or sediment was plain to see.
Downstream, we were building dams. The purpose was to retain, to hold the sediment.
At the same time, mine teams were on the banks of the 2 affected rivers taking water samples, which were sent to independent laboratories for analysis.
There were no heavy metals. All the parameters were in accordance with what is permitted, except for turbidity as well as the color.
The laboratory tests also confirmed the amount of red-coloured waste or tailings sediment in the rivers was above normal.
The actual extent of what was happening during this leak is 26 grams per litre, 26 grams of sediment per litre.
The mine says it brought in external specialists and academics to monitor and assess the biodiversity of one of the affected rivers.
We made a so-called technical scientific expedition where certain universities made part of that expedition, as well as Angola's Environment Ministry, certain independent organizations, environmental institutes, private companies, and that was a whole expedition throughout the whole course of the river to see, to assess actually the biodiversity of that course of the whole river.
Citing the DRC's Environment Minister, Reuters reported that 12 people died and 4,400 fell sick in Southern Democratic Republic of Congo following the tailings leak. Mine management says their research of the river on the Angola side shows no such impacts.
Well, in all the area affected from Katoka to Mark 13, which is the border between Angola and Congo, there have been no deaths, illnesses or sicknesses registered.
The matter remains unresolved. The mine's claiming that its leak didn't cause those deaths, while the Democratic Republic of Congo government are claiming compensation. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Let's get the DRC side of this story. We have our correspondent Chris Chamringa joining us live from Kinshasa. Chris, the DRC government said in August that at least 12 people had died from suspected effects of that leak from the Katoka diamond mine in Angola into the Chikapa River. Thousands were said to be sick from this. Now, the mining company says no such effects were proven. What's the latest from the DRC side?
Yes, Peninah, I spoke to a senior official from the Ministry of Environment here in the DRC, and he said that the Angolan mining firm can say whatever they please. What they know for a fact is that there was a leak, a very serious leak, that turned the river Chikapa red, and that they confirmed from the local officials in that area that 12 people died and 4,400 people fell sick because of drinking contaminated water. And there was a number of fish that died and people who are complaining of diarrhea. The government here still maintains that those people need to be compensated. The victims of this accident by the Angolan mining firm need to be compensated. The Angolan company, Katoka, said they had offered some food and other relief items to the people, but the Congolese are saying it's not enough. Now, we also spoke to some officials from the Angolan embassy here last month about this demand by the DRC for compensation, and they say that this matter is being taken up at a very high level by officials from both countries. He was a diplomat who refused to divulge what actions will be taken, but he said that they will ensure that they come up with a resolution that acceptable to all parties affected by this disaster. Peninah?
Okay, so speaking of resolutions acceptable to everybody, what's happening on the ground there in DRC? What's being done to assist those allegedly affected by this leak the government mentioned?
Yes, so Peninah, when this accident happened, the DRC government sent the Minister of Environment, the Minister of Rural Development, and the Minister of Health to that area in Kasai to assess the damage and also find some ways to provide some emergency support to the people who were affected. And so what they did, they gave food, water, and medicine to the people. But like I mentioned earlier, the government said that is not enough. The people in that area, especially those who lost their loved ones, the 12 people who are said to have died, have to be compensated. And they're saying the compensation must be made by the Angolan diamond firm. And that is what their demand has been until now. So they're working with the Angolan authorities. Now, this latest information from the Angolan diamond firm will certainly create some tensions among the Congolese people who have been, pushing very hard to get compensated for the people who are affected by this disaster.
All right, Chris, thank you very much for that. Chris Ochamringa live in Kinshasa. Now, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea is slamming the UN over a meeting about Pyongyang's latest missile tests. Pyongyang launched several weapons last month, which prompted the UN Security Council to convene an emergency meeting Friday. It ended without a joint statement. A DPRK official called the meeting a wanton encroachment on the country's sovereignty and a serious, intolerable provocation. Pyongyang is also accusing the UN of applying double standards over member states' military activities. In the US, thousands of demonstrators have marched across the country to protest against increasing state restrictions on abortion. More than 600 demonstrations were held. Last month, a new Texas law banned abortions after about 6 weeks of pregnancy. But experts say that's before most women are aware of their pregnancy and even earlier than most abortions. The law makes no exceptions for rape or incest, and it relies on ordinary citizens for enforcement. There is a reward of $10,000 for successfully suing anyone who helps provide an illegal abortion. Toby Muse tells us more.
We're here in downtown Washington, D.C. for the Women's March 2021. It's also being called a rally for abortion justice. Now, the tens of thousands of people who have come out are here to show their support for the continued access to safe and legal abortion.
The goal for today is to get across the top line message of abortion justice cannot wait. And there's a lot of things happening in the courts and in legislation, and now there's a lot happening in the streets for women and allies to have an opportunity to make their voices heard on this topic.
In different events across the United States on Saturday, it's expected around 100,000 people could end up participating. Washington, D.C.'s march begins in Freedom Plaza, ending in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. Marchers want to show their support for continued access to abortion, given that the court could soon touch on a case related to abortion rights. Still, the number of protesters seen on Saturday was a far cry from what was seen back in 2017, when hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people came to Washington, D.C. to protest the election of then-President Donald Trump. Activists said Trump had shown a history of misogyny and abusive behavior towards women, something the former president has consistently denied. The Women's March organization was further boosted by the explosion of the Me Too scandal, when it was revealed men in powerful positions in different industries were using their power to abuse women. As the Women's March organization grew in power, so did the problems within the organization. There were accusations of anti-Semitism and bickering amongst the leadership. Over time, the organization lost momentum and popularity. Saturday's march was in part organized in protest to what's been happening in the state of Texas, where laws passed there make it much more difficult for women to get an abortion. Activists here say that they fear that what happened in Texas could spread across the country, putting in danger a woman's access to safe and legal abortions. Toby Muse reporting for CGTN, Washington.
This is Africa Live. It's coming up to 1:15. Still ahead. Global COVID deaths surpassed the 5 million mark.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climate and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Aden, Tunis, Cairo,
Algeria,
Juba, Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice. How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
A tally by Reuters shows the global death toll from the pandemic has topped 5 million as the Delta variant spreads. Over half of them were reported in the United States, Russia, Brazil, Mexico and India. The US has recorded the world's highest death toll of more than 700,000. Reuters reports the first 2.5 million global deaths were recorded in over a year, while it took just under 8 months to bring the number to 5 million. The world saw a daily average of 8,000 deaths in the 7 days that ended Friday. That's about 5 deaths every minute, but the rate has slowed down in recent weeks. There are more efforts to provide vaccines for poorer nations, even as richer ones have begun offering booster shots. Still, over half of the world has yet to receive a first dose. Vaccine cooperation between Egypt and China continues on a solid track. This past week, Chinese pharmaceutical Sinovac sent to Egypt 1 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines. In addition, Cairo received 3,000 liters of raw material, which will be used to produce some 4.6 million jabs domestically. Here's Adel Mahroui with more.
A new shipment of Chinese vaccines arrived to Egypt this week, promising a steady flow of COVID-19 jabs to the country. 1 million vials of Sinovac's CoronaVac landed this week at Cairo International Airport. That's in addition to 3,000 liters of vaccine raw material, which would be manufactured domestically.
Sinovac's vaccine and Chinese jabs in general helped the country to speed up the vaccination process during the past few months in Egypt. We've rolled out about 16 million doses. 16 million Egyptians have so far applied to get the vaccine. There are more than 1,000 centers in Egypt that provide Chinese vaccines.
In total, Egypt will be receiving 8,000 liters of the Sinovac raw biomaterial during the next few days. That should be sufficient to produce 15 million doses of the Egyptian-made vaccine with Chinese technology.
The Egyptian vaccine is being distributed in all local vaccination centers, in universities and schools. It is witnessing wide acceptance, exactly like the foreign brands. There are no major complaints reported in terms of side effects. Only a slight fever and body aches have been reported, which disappears on the second day in most cases.
Since the production of the Vaxera Sinovac COVID-19 vaccine began in August, Chinese jabs have been leading the nation's vaccination efforts. On Wednesday, Egyptian Health Minister Hala Zaid announced receiving 4.4 million doses from another Chinese pharmaceutical, Sinopharm. To curb infection rates as it enters the fourth wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Egyptian government is enforcing strict measures over its employees. They will be banned from entering government offices unless they are vaccinated or they show a negative PCR test every 3 days on their own expenses. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Cardiovascular diseases are the leading cause of death globally. This is according to the World Health Organization that cites nearly 18 million lives are lost every year. And for countries with fragile health systems like Somalia, heart disease is an ongoing challenge. CGTN's Joy Kiruki, however, looks at how the country's first specialty hospital to treat cardiovascular diseases is changing that narrative.
After prolonged struggle with cardiovascular diseases, Somalia has taken a step forward in administering treatment. This is through the Red Sea Hospital, opened in the capital, Mogadishu. Patients have welcomed the facility, hopeful that their recovery can now be realized.
I have been referred to this hospital for a surgery. Before the operation, I could not manage to sleep on either side. I now thank God I'm really doing well.
I was admitted to both Difir and Jazeera hospitals. I was referred here by Difir Hospital to seek specialized medication from Red Sea, since they are good at the treatment of heart disease.
Medical specialists say that health facilities need to be more vigilant in making referrals in order to aid in saving more lives.
Before our facility, there was no coronary angiography laboratory in Mogadishu. In all around the world, the treatment of acute heart attacks is one thing: immediate coronary angiography, primary PCI as we call. The other treatments are have very bad results if compared to this modern treatment. Before us, lots of people were dying.
Compounding the challenges posed by cardiovascular diseases, doctors are warning of the negative effects that COVID-19 may pose.
The COVID-19 itself can affect the heart. This is a problem. We call it myocarditis. It affects the heart. And secondly, because of the fear of COVID-19, people become more afraid to come to hospitals to protect themselves from getting infected.
Somalia's health system has been greatly impacted by an ongoing civil war that has lasted for the past 3 decades. However, some security gains have left many, including heart patients, hopeful for a new dawn in the sector. Joy Kiruki Juma, CGTN.
In Nigeria, the government is being urged to work more closely with state governors to find a lasting solution to perennial clashes between farmers and herders. The central government has recently opted to support open grazing of cattle and the reclamation of traditional grazing routes. But many states, especially in the country's southern region, have abolished open grazing and urged livestock owners to embrace ranching as an alternative. Correspondent Tesem Akende reports from Jos.
Benjamin Azuojik is a farmer on the outskirts of Jos in north-central Nigeria. He fears the land he farms on may someday be reclaimed by the government as a grazing route.
My heart beats really fast each time I hear the government talk about reclaiming land for grazing routes. We inherited these farmlands from our forebears. I can't say whether or not they're on grazing routes, but I will be really affected if it is reclaimed, because this is all we have, and farming is all we know.
Farmers and herders pursue their livelihoods in different ways, with farmers owning land through ancestral inheritance or by leasing it for crops and cattle grazing. Herders traditionally engage in cattle rearing by moving their animals daily to open fields in search of pasture or foliage. Conflict between farmers and herders over land has led to a significant number of deaths and the destruction of property. Amnesty International says more than 2,000 people were killed and several thousand others displaced in 2018 alone in such clashes. The United Nations says for many years, cattle herders and farmers have been in conflict over land rights in Nigeria. President Muhammadu Buhari in June this year approved the return to open grazing and the re-establishment of grazing reserves as a solution to the issue. It's a system where cattle herders in Nigeria used designated grazing routes to move their cattle from one state or region to another in the country. The directive seeks to take land back from people who have converted grazing routes for their personal or business use. The government has begun identifying such places and is threatening to demolish buildings to restore the grazing potential. But many Nigerians think that is not the solution. They recommend ranching for herders as a better way forward.
That place they believe that is the route. I think people are living there today. It has been occupied, you understand? So for them to ask those people to leave the route, it cannot work. That will cause another problem in the country, to me. It will cause another problem. They should go back to they should establish a private ranch.
It's a private business. They should ranch their cattle in one place, buy feed their cattle. Anytime they want to sell it, they go to the market, remove their cattle and sell and make profit.
Lawyers blame urbanization for putting pressure on both farmers and herders. They want the federal government to ensure it gets the support of governors who are the legal custodians of land in the country before proceeding with its plan.
From the very first section of the Land Use Act, place all lands in a state in the hands of the governor, the government of the state, including the local government. The federal government needs to rethink its position, because even if it goes to the highest court in the land, I can bet you that the powers of the state governors over the land in the state is greater than the power the federal government wields over that same state.
Many governors in the country, especially in the southern region, have abolished open grazing and given room for establishment of ranches by the private sector. The governors say cattle ranches where the cattle are kept in one place will be a better way to combat the farmer-herder clashes in the country. They say that will also lead to improved protein quality in beef, as the cows will be given pasture and other requirements more appropriately. Farmers like Benjamin Aziojic hope the conflict with herders will be resolved in a way that doesn't lead to them losing their farmlands to be used as grazing routes. Tessim Akendi, CGTN Jos, Nigeria.
Egypt has inaugurated the Al Tinbuga Al Maridani Mosque after restoration work that started in 2018. It's an historic mosque with rare Islamic architectural designs from the Mamluk era. Here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim with more from Cairo.
The mosque, which was inaugurated by Egypt's Tourism and Antiquities Ministry, was built in 1340 AD by Prince Al Tinbuga Al Maridani, son-in-law of then-ruler Sultan al-Nasir Muhammad bin Qalawun. It's located in Old Cairo's historic suburb of Al-Darb al-Ahmar.
He was a minister of defense and was very popular with the Sultan al-Nasir Muhammad bin Qalawun. He built the mosque as a gift to the Sultan. It was unique, being the largest mosque at the time with the largest prayer area. The dome is a famous one taken from the huge Bin Talawun Mosque. It's actually a water tank that's been decorated and transformed into a dome. The minaret is beautiful in its engineering design. It has a square base linked to an octangular design above and the top crown of the minaret. What's attractive as well are the motifs, its glass drawings and its various colors.
Egypt is known for continuous restoration work on ancient Egyptian monuments, but experts are also working hard to restore treasures from other dynasties, such as this Islamic mosque that was left without renovation for more than 100 years.
The renovation work here is not very different than on ancient Egyptian pieces. The basics are the same, as we don't change anything in the original monument and its structure, whatever the historical period. The main aim is to clean and renovate the monument and restore it to its original state. The project here took 3 years to finish. The most important restoration work took place on the prayer area that was damaged, the minaret and the floors, as well as cleaning all tiles and granite columns and wooden covers.
The Egyptian government is focusing on reintroducing Islamic, Coptic and Jewish cultural heritage on the tourism agenda, alongside the more famous ancient Egyptian history. And this $32 million restoration work, funded by the Aga Khan Foundation and the European Union, supports the government's initiative. It's part of a project titled Creating Access to Cairo's Islamic Heritage, which also upgrades the areas surrounding the historical mosques for locals to benefit by producing handmade pieces and opening bazaars for visitors.
The Bab el Wazir is one of the most important sites in Old Cairo. There is extra attention by authorities to ensure the whole district is well renovated and all Islamic sites here are restored, and not just this mosque, to ensure they become a focal point.
The final phase of the project will see this poor neighborhood of Old Cairo transformed into a new attractive touristic destination. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
This is Africa Live. Coming up in business news. A direct flight from Libyan capital Tripoli has touched down in Cairo for the first time since 2014 as connection resumes.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
The British Prime Minister has promised to make big and bold decisions to transform post-COVID Britain. Boris Johnson said this on Saturday ahead of his Conservative Party's annual conference. The government faces an outcry by those unable to fill up their cars with petrol and by gas companies struggling with a spike in wholesale prices. The country's Petrol Retailers Association says gas stations in London and southeast England continue to suffer a lack of fuel. The UK plans to deploy military tanker drivers from Monday to deliver gas. Johnson said the shortages were driven by demand and called on drivers to return to normal buying habits.
I appreciate how frustrating it has been, how infuriating it has been for people. The situation is stabilising, but it's a problem that has been driven really by demand, not by supply. Though obviously we're taking all the precautions that we can.
A direct flight from Libyan capital Tripoli has touched down in Cairo for the first time since 2014. Egypt had suspended direct flights with its North African neighbour over security concerns after civil war broke out in Libya. Yasser Hakim has more.
It's the first flight to Cairo direct from Tripoli after a 7-year absence. Previously, Libyan flights, which were few and far in between, would arrive at Bulgar Arab Airport in Alexandria, where passengers would either take another flight or a 4-hour drive to Cairo.
Opening Cairo Airport will make the trip much easier for travelers who used to suffer from the long trip before. Companies and laborers will benefit because there are reconstruction projects to begin in Libya by Egyptian companies, which requires more labor movement, as well as investors and cargo shipments. So it's important for Libya's economic development and Egypt investment opportunities.
Aside from flight resumptions, officials from both countries had also signed cooperation agreements aimed at supporting the ailing Libyan aviation sector.
Egypt will cooperate by training pilots, cabin crew, engineers and air freight operations. Also, agreements have been signed for Libyan airplanes to undergo maintenance and install spare parts in Egypt.
For now, Libya's Afriqiya Airlines will operate a schedule of 9 flights per week from Tripoli and Benghazi to Cairo. Libyan Airlines and Egypt's carrier Egypt Air are still to announce if they will join that route soon. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Nigerians are reaping the benefits of the new terminal at Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport. China assisted the project under its Belt and Road Initiative. The West African nation is a top investment destination for China. This and other BRI projects are improving transport infrastructure across the country. CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam reports.
A hive of activity at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport terminal in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Media practitioner Bolade Kingsworth is one of the frequent flyers here. He's heading back to his base in Istanbul after visiting family and friends. His previous travel experience through the old terminal had been unpleasant, but that changed since the launch of the new terminal building.
Like an international airport for real. I mean, the other one was like a local airport, and it was very choked in. It was small, and everybody was scrambling to get through and all that. Something good like this, and you ask us to pay, we'll be like, yeah, let's pay, because we see what you're doing with the money.
The airport terminal sits on approximately 56,000 square meters of land, with a capacity of 15 million passengers annually. It was constructed by Chinese firm CCECC and funded from China's Exim Bank. Industry players admit the benefits have been enormous.
A lot of people have been gainfully employed in the terminal and what have you. The terminal has been able to secure for the first time the ASQ award, Airport Service Quality Awards. The airport is well fortified. All our machines are serviceable. That is to boost the confidence of our esteemed passengers that passes through the airport. Our cameras, CCTV, have tremendously assisted us in unhacking a lot of things that have happened.
The facility on ground and the size of the airport has made it so easier for airlines to fly in their numbers to Abuja. Unlike before, when airline has to take turn, airline has to request for landing permits and wait for approval just because of inadequate space for them to park.
However, there are more gains to be achieved, as authorities have yet to fully maximize the potential of the facility.
There are a lot of shopping area, duty-free spaces that have not been occupied. I think the government really need to look into that. The FAN, the Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria, really need to look at commercializing that facility more, because a lot of spaces that are not utilized.
This is one of 4 new terminals constructed in Nigeria through China's Belt and Road Initiative. The projects cost a total $600 million, a $500 million loan from China Exim Bank, and $100 million counterpart funding from Nigeria. Industry players believe that China's assisted projects like this would bring Nigeria closer to bridging its infrastructure gap, especially in the transportation sector. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Creation Wines in South Africa's Western Cape province has just been named the best vineyard in Africa and the 10th best in the world. The awards were handed over by Western Cape Premier Erland Wende at his official home in Cape Town. He commended the wine estate for winning the prestigious prize despite the severe impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on South Africa's wine industry. Renee Delcam has the story.
Creation Wines is situated in the Hemel and Arder Valley, which means the Valley of Heaven and Earth. It's famous for its Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and unique food and wine pairing.
In 19 years, we never faced as many challenges as we did in the last 18 months. You know, it was just so tough. We didn't know when we would be able to open. The government locked down at one point exports, so we had absolutely no income.
Creation Wine says that part of its success was how it managed to innovate at the height of the COVID-19 lockdown. When local hotels and restaurants shut down, Creation started an online quick shop and virtual wine tasting to make its wines available to customers around the world.
Most of our business is in the on-trade, high-end gastronomy around the world. So we had to pivot and get into high-end retail around the world. We had to find new export markets. We had to find ways to keep engaging with our customers, and so that's when we set up the virtual tastings.
Members of the Western Cape government praised Creation Wines for its excellence and vision
and said the awards showcased the best that the Western Cape and South Africa had to offer.
Number one in Africa.
We really have felt the pressure over the last 18 months of what this pandemic has meant to the hospitality industry. And I think this brings hope. It says that despite all of that, we are world class. Despite all of that, there are massive opportunities going forward.
We export to 40 countries, and we are also just so grateful to our local tourism, because our local tourism is what's also helped keep us alive.
Creation Wine says it's looking forward to welcoming more local and international visitors and making a greater investment in their team, their estate and communities living in this world-renowned wine region. Renee Dalcom, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
You're watching Africa Live. Coming up after the break. Contestants with hearing impairments compete for the top crown in Tanzania's unique beauty pageant.
Join us in global business and see Africa through our eyes. The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN. Welcome to the world today on CGTN.
Tanzania has hosted Africa's first ever beauty pageant for the hearing impaired in the country's commercial capital of Dar es Salaam. The event brought together contestants from 12 African countries and sought to empower the deaf community across the continent. CGTN's Daniel Kijo has more.
At first glance, this is a beauty pageant like any other. Enveloped in the glitz and glamour is the fact that the contestants here are unable to hear the music accompanying their catwalks. Organizers of the Miss and Mr. Deaf Africa competition say the aim is to get young people with hearing impairments on the African continent noticed.
Some of them know football, they know a little bit of basketball, so they have also opportunities to showcase their talents, maybe in sports, but also in culture, various cultural perspectives. Because some of them are very good in terms of tailoring, in terms of designing clothes. Some of them have designed their own clothes today. So I think they have multiple talents. People can pick and develop them.
The competition pitted 30 contestants from 12 African countries against each other. The winner of this year's Miss Deaf Africa believes winning the competition is a step towards changing the negative perceptions around deaf people in Africa.
I believe it will change. And that is through the advocacy that we are doing in Africa with the deaf, and also to show people outside the world, Africa, that also deaf can do anything and everything, and They should stop thinking that we can't do anything, so we can get opportunity.
The United Nations estimates that as of 2021, there are some 136 million people with some degree of hearing loss in Africa. It projects that number could climb up to 332 million people by 2050. Organizers of this event hope that when this competition is over, contestants can use their skills to make a living for themselves and improve their livelihood. It is also a platform to build a bridge between the deaf community and the hearing people. Deaf people in Africa are often isolated and denied opportunities that could lead to a financially independent and fulfilled life. Some in the deaf community see being seen in a positive light as critical to their advancement in society.
When you see a deaf person doing something victorious, it's very easy for society to be awakened and for them to get respect for the good deed. I believe it is one of the ways of getting more respect.
Winners of the competition will represent Africa at the Miss and Mr. Deaf World Competition. Many in the deaf community hope such competitions will give them something to celebrate about. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
In South Africa, some of the continent's top animators have gathered for the Cape Town International Animation Festival. The event is being held for the first time since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic and has brought together major international film and animation studios, all seeking new locally made animated content. CGTN's Travers Andrews has more.
Over the past few years, the animation industry in South Africa has grown from strength to strength. The Cape Town International Animation Festival is where many of the industry's top animators gather to discuss new and current projects. They also use the event to network and pitch films to studios seeking local content.
Globally, we are seeing a huge demand for animated content to provide for families. But above and beyond that, what we're also seeing as a trend is a desire for African stories and authentic African storytelling. And this is where South Africa is primed to play a role in it, because we're probably the most advanced out of the different territories. That being said, Nigeria, Tanzania, Kenya, they're right behind us.
Animators also use the festival to explore the latest in animation technology. Films such as Kumba by Cape Town-based Triggerfish Studios has shown the level of quality found in the local industry.
We bring a lot of global talent into this event to upskill and to run workshops. But what we're also doing is we're learning from each other. Sometimes the knowledge doesn't come internationally. It's sitting right here in this country. We just don't know how to talk to each other. So events like this festival is very important for local networking with each other.
Many emerging animators also use the event to access funding for their film projects, and many new financing opportunities are being unlocked.
Our National Film and Video Foundation has brought funding in. That's our national funder for development. The DTI will hopefully announce their incentive for in animation. As Westgrow, we're very proud that the City of Cape Town has also announced a fund. We're hoping it will include animation. We're waiting for details.
In order to broaden the access to this year's event, it was streamed online as well, so that amateur animators could also take part and learn from industry professionals. Unlike many other industries, the COVID-19 pandemic has actually driven the growth of local animation, and the increasing appetite for African content is only set to unlock new opportunities for animators across the continent. Travers Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
And coming up in sports news, South Africa eyes hosting rights for the 2021 FIFA Club World Cup.
Africa Live. Find your voice.